Hello friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Haley. I am a Christian wife, homeschool mama of 3 who is out to redeem my very own literary education. And in order to do so, I chose a female author of the year, and that is Jane Austen. And so, because of that, I participated in Jane Austen July for the very first time. Now you're seeing this video mid-August for a few reasons. Number one of the books I was in the middle of for Jane Austen July as August started may be one of my favorite books of the year, and so I knew it would be worth the wait to just keep going and then film this video once I finished it. 2, I have 3 children who are ages 5 and under, so sometimes it just takes me a really long time to read a good book, which is totally okay. And 3, I was hosting a book club barbecue at my house, which if y'all host, you know it takes some time and work to prepare, especially if you live in a home with very small children. I did do a reading vlog for that, or not a reading vlog, but a kind of prep and plan and decorate vlog for the book club barbecue. I figured you all would really enjoy seeing, and I'll be sharing that in my next video. But today's video is all about all the books I read for Jane Austen July and the books I'm currently reading in August. And the first book I finished up for Jane Austen July was Sense and Sensibility. This is the book that the reading challenge did as a group, and I am so glad I picked it up. I also did a reading vlog for Sense and Sensibility, which was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful day. I took you to my favorite bookstore, read the book, and shared my thoughts, but now I finally finished it, and I absolutely loved it. I knew nothing about Sense and Sensibility going in other than it was about 2 sisters, and those sisters are Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood, who could not be more opposite of one another as sisters, which is often just true. Most sisters aren't anything alike. And Eleanor Dashwood is the sister of Sense. She is very put together and prudent, and her family kind of looks to her to make all of the responsible decisions. And Marianne is the sister of Sensibility. Just very strong opinions, great emotion, just very prone to let things be as they may, which is also the same way that their mother is, which is why they rely so much on Eleanor. And because of these sisters' 2 different personalities, they both experience different trials romantically and handle them very, very differently. Eleanor is extremely reserved, and although I think it caused her quite a bit of pain, Eleanor Dashwood is the Jane Austen character so far that I've read that I want to be the most like in real life. So she may not be as lively and as charming as Lizzie Bennet, but however, this is the character that I want to emulate in my everyday life. Sometimes you can be put into situations that are extremely difficult, and how Eleanor Dashwood did not lose her temper multiple times in this book, I will never know. But it just goes to show you that a rock-solid, constant, and sensible character can carry you through anything, and there is so much strength in that. And while Marianne had a lot of sensibility, and in some ways, I don't think emotion is a bad thing. In others, I think it can kind of lead you astray and allow you to lose focus on what's important or what's real and what's true. And you just have to read the book in order to find out. This is the 4th Jane Austen I've read this year. I have read Mansfield Park, Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, and Sense and Sensibility. And this one is my 3rd favorite so far. But I love them all so much because Jane Austen is just really an incredibly talented writer. And I would say that Pride and Prejudice is still my number 1. It's just so fun and well done that you can't help it. Number 2 is Mansfield Park. That one surprisingly spoke to me in ways that I did not expect. I really loved reading about a shy character. And then Sense and Sensibility. I just have so much respect for Eleanor Dashwood that I loved this book because of that. Although I would say plot-wise, it's maybe not as interesting as some of the other ones. And I did enjoy the romances in this one as well. I only have one thing to say, and that is the real hero of the story is Colonel Brandon, and that's all I will say. So, and then last but not least is Persuasion, which I loved, but for some reason just had a hard time really diving into. But I love Sense and Sensibility, and I'm excited to read my final 2 Jane Austen books, which are Emma and Northanger Abbey. I'm hoping to get to Emma in September and Northanger Abbey in October, so we'll see. But the next Jane Austen book I read was an audiobook, and this was a Jane Austen biography, which was Lucy Worsley's Jane Austen at Home. And I loved this biography and found it so interesting. I think it was a great idea to read some of Jane Austen's works first, because then I just kind of naturally fell in love with the author and wanted to know more about her. And this book really enlightened me on her life. I found it so interesting that, number one, she grew up in a rectory, so a very Christian home that also doubled as a boys' boarding school. I found it incredibly interesting that she would wake up and start her day with piano every day. So like some of those other characters in her novels, she was also accomplished. She was a great writer. She loved piano and started her mornings out that way. And she was really great at sewing and needlework. And often while she was doing some of those mundane tasks, she would write books in her head. One family member could remember a time when they were sewing and doing their needlework, and Jane laughed out loud and then ran over to write on her little paper, write some notes and put it away and come back. And I just thought it was incredibly fascinating that she would write books in her head as she was doing other things. I also write poetry the same way, just kind of in my head as I'm doing other things and other tasks. And there are so many other things about Jane Austen that I learned in this book, especially the fact that so many of her own personal life experiences shaped the stories that she wrote. She was very inspired by real people and real situations that members of her family and herself experienced. So I highly encourage that one if you're looking for a Jane Austen biography to read. And the next, but certainly not the least, probably one of my favorite books of the year, was The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. This book blew me away. This is about Mary Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, who I always wanted more for. I just never thought she was as bad as Lydia and Kitty, and I just thought she deserved some redemption. And this was it. This book was everything that I wanted in a Mary Bennet story. This book is broken up into 4 parts, and in the first part, we see some of those major events in Pride and Prejudice through Mary Bennet's eyes. So if you've ever wondered what her relationship is with her mother and father, with her sisters, what was she thinking when Mr. Collins came in search of a wife? What was she thinking during that infamous piano scene at Netherfield Ball when she very ashamedly gets escorted out by her father? And the first part of that book answered all of those questions through Mary's eyes. But then after that, Mary kind of finds herself the last Bennet sister who isn't married and who hasn't made a life for herself yet. And she's still very unsure of herself and where she should go. And she eventually lands with her aunt and uncle Gardiner, the same aunt and uncle who took Jane away after her heartbreak whenever Mr. Bingley left, and who Lizzie went to Pemberley with. That same aunt and uncle played a huge part in Mary's redemption story. But something else I really loved and appreciated was Mary went to go visit Charlotte Lucas and Mr. Collins as a married couple. So we finally get to revisit them and see what their marriage is like now, what their life looks like, what Mary thinks their life looks like. And it was so interesting. It's what I needed. It's the closure I needed for Mary. And some of the characters in here are, I would say, exaggerated a bit in order to further along Mary's story. So Mrs. Bennet, their mother, I think is a bit more of a bully in this book than what she would be. However, I could see it. And I thought the same thing about Charlotte Lucas in this book. I felt she was a bit colder than maybe she would be, but I could also see it. I think it's important to remember if you pick this book that Janice Hadlow, the author, is Janice Hadlow. She's not Jane Austen. So she's not going to write exactly like Jane or interpret characters and situations exactly like Jane, but she really, really catches the spirit of it. And this book just had me tear up so many times. I really felt like she got Mary. And then just seeing Mary grow as a person, I'm so proud. And Mary also faces the same questions that almost every Jane Austen heroine faces, and that is, what is my life going to look like? Am I going to marry for comfort and money? Do I marry for love? Or do I forge my own path? And you'll love it. That's all I can say. I was incredibly pleased with the ending and getting there. This is a pretty long book, which is why it took me so long to read. I've heard some reviews say that it's very slow, but because I love Mary Bennet so much, I just don't care. I enjoyed every single moment of it. And there was also a big emphasis on scholarly books, books that were named in here that I would not recognize had I not read Jane Austen at home. So those were fun little Easter eggs, as well as poetry. Poetry played a huge part of Mary's transformation, and I won't give too much away other than to say that it was so lovely, and that mainly it was William Wordsworth. So take that for what you will. But this is one of my favorite books of the year. Every time that I reread Pride and Prejudice, I will immediately pick this one up right after. It was that good. So if you've ever wanted more for Mary Bennet, this is it. I don't see how you could have done a better job. I love it, and it's going to be one of my favorites forever. And the last book I got is actually a Jane Austen picture book that I read to my kids, and it's called Ordinary Extraordinary Jane Austen by Deborah Hopkinson and illustrated by Leng. And this book is adorable. It is a child's version of Jane Austen at home, and it has some beautiful watercolor illustrations. My daughter really loved it. I think if you have a budding creative writer, this would be a really great picture book to inspire your kids with. Just very charming and adorable, and we will be rereading it over and over again. And my daughter loved the illustrations so much that she wanted to copy them. So if you're looking for a Jane Austen picture book for your littles, I highly recommend Ordinary Extraordinary Jane Austen. Now, I did not get to Jane Austen's unfinished works like I hoped. I hoped to read Sanditon, the Watsons, and Lady Susan, but the other Bennet sister just had my heart, and I had to finish it. So I think what I will do is I still have 2 of Jane Austen's main novels left to go, and I will just squeeze some of these other stories in between and just handle it that way. But this particular edition, Everyman's Library, has Sanditon, the Watsons, Lady Susan, and also all of her other works that I read about in Jane Austen at home, but it's all in one place. There are prayers written by Jane Austen in here, which was really special as a Christian to connect with her in that way. Her prayers are incredibly beautiful and reverent, and just a different experience than reading some of her kind of like wit and observation of human nature books. So it was really cool to connect with her in that way. And my favorite part, and if all the other books look like this, I'm going to have to buy these editions, is the cloth bound Under the Dust Jacket. That's a beautiful green right there. That is my favorite color. And if the other Everyman Library editions of Jane Austen books are that color, I'm going to have to buy them. So that is my Jane Austen July wrap up. And what I'm currently reading in August is Little Men, Life at Plumfield with Jo's Boys by Louisa May Alcott. I'm just a little bit in so far, and I love this book. If you are a homeschool mama, there is no greater book that you could read right at the beginning of the homeschool year. Jo March and her husband now have children of their own, but they also run a boarding school for boys at Plumfield. And their parental advice and wisdom and just ideas and things they do to help the boys grow in character is phenomenal. Like, if I were to tab this book, it would be full of tabs and highlights because the advice is so good. For example, on Sundays, Joe has a book that is the conscience book. So each boy at Plumfield has their own page, and throughout the week, Joe writes things like maybe they did something good or if they did something bad. And at the end of the week, she just reads the page with that one particular boy, and either she is sad or disappointed or very glad and very proud. And because they love Miss Joe, or Mother Bear as they call her, so much, they really want this conscience record to be good at the end of the week. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. And this book is full of things like that. It's just incredibly inspiring. And I'm only at the beginning. So this is probably going to wind up being another one of my favorites of the year. And I will let you all know my thoughts probably in my August wrap up that may pop up in September. We'll see. But I'm loving it so far and can't wait to continue. And the other book I'm reading through is from my library, and that is The Lazy Genius Kitchen by Kendra Adachi. She is also the author of The Lazy Genius Way, which is a book that's basically just life hacks. I own the audiobook of it, and I haven't listened to it in a while, but it's definitely worth a re-listen. But The Lazy Genius Kitchen are those lazy genius principles applied to the kitchen. I've had such a hard time with my kitchen over the years. I was raised by a single dad, so I ate frozen meals and Pop-Tarts for everything. And when I got married and had children, I just wanted to learn how to cook and to cook well. But I still struggle with enjoying that. And this book, I think, is really, really helping me and inspiring me. I finished part 1. I still have quite a bit to go. But it's really helping me kind of decide what's important to me in my kitchen and then arranging my kitchen according to those priorities that I have. And I love it so far, and I am reading it. Now, this is a book you could just pick up, flip to the section you want to read, and skim through it. But I'm intentionally reading through it to apply these principles to my kitchen. But I really love it so far. And because it's from my library and it's not my book that I can keep or mark up, I am currently using a 3x5 index card as my bookmark. And I'm making notes and things I want to remember as I go, since I have to give this back at the end of the month. But I will also share this on a wrap-up video. And that's all I'm reading for August. I think I may get to The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis, which is the last book in the Chronicles of Narnia. But we'll see. I'm kind of trying to shift my priorities for reading and just read more slowly and really soak in the stories and the ideas and not just rush through it for consumption's sake. So that's all I have. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you had a wonderful Jane Austen July. Please share with me in the comments below if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, and what you're reading in August. And I will see you next time. Happy reading!